What's going on, H-Town, and everybody outside of H-Town that's locked in on the Houston Rockets? My name is David Delano, and this is Rockets Daily. Make sure to like and subscribe to this channel. We're going to have you locked in with the Houston Rockets all off season into next season. We're going to be talking draft, free agency, everything that goes on, and hopefully with the 2025 NBA Finals going on, hopefully we're back with you this time next year talking about the 2026 Finals with your Houston Rockets involved. So make sure, leave a comment, let us know what you think about today's show. Let us know if there's any topics that you want to talk about, any trade scenarios that you have, anything you want to throw out there. Let me know. I promise I will read each and every comment because this channel is going to be for you. So make sure that you go ahead, like and subscribe. This is Rockets Daily. All right. First of all, we want to talk about is somewhat recent news. Things travel so fast and things fly by so fast in this NBA offseason. A lot of times for most teams, the NBA offseason is the most exciting time of the year. Sometimes the NBA offseason trade proposals and coaching firings and the possible the soap opera of who's going to go here and all the trade scenarios are a lot of times more exciting than the actual games. And the New York Knicks decided that Tom Thibodeau is not going to be the guy going forward, despite leading the Knicks to their first Eastern Conference Finals appearance in 25 years. Steadily progressed, but Tom Thibodeau, gets his team to play hard, but plays his guys more minutes than any other, plays his starters more minutes than any other coach in the NBA. Disappointing. Well, I think overall, you thought the season was a success for the Knicks. They beat the Boston Celtics, but losing to the Indiana Pacers ultimately led to the New York Knicks going in a different direction. And with the New York Knicks going in a different direction, this is the Knicks. So, we're going to see all type of different trade scenarios out there. And one of the scenarios I saw reported by Mark Stein from ESPN is that the New York Knicks possibly have interest in Ime Udoka. So, everything's a trickle-down ripple effect sometimes in the NBA. That's obviously not good news for the Houston Rockets that the Knicks are interested in him. But fortunately, Udoka, he is under team control. The Rockets, he has 2 more years on his contract. So the Knicks can't just, this isn't college, they can't just poach him from the Rockets. They would need permission to speak to him, and they would need to be able to reach out some type of mutual deal. So obviously, it's worth talking about. Obviously, it's being reported out there that the Knicks want Udoka. A lot of the mainstream platforms are probably going to try to push that narrative if they want Udoka there. But there's so many different people being tied to this New York Knicks job now. From Jay Wright to now Jason Kidd. So many different names, big names that are being tied out there. And I think that the odds of Udoka going to the Knicks are highly unlikely because I don't know why Houston would comply or try to help the Knicks in any way with this happening. So obviously, Eastern Conference, that would be a good way for him to directly stick it to the Boston Celtics. But, the Tom Thibodeau firing, trickle-down effect in a lot of different ways, but I don't think that it is going to affect Ime Udoka's status with the Rockets. Now, however, what Thibodeau being fired does show is a lot of teams now, we've been looking at the NBA Finals with the Pacers and the Thunder both reaching the Finals. Cleveland Cavaliers had the best record in the Eastern Conference. Minnesota Timberwolves reaching the Western Conference Finals. Denver Nuggets, what does their future look like? When you look at all the Los Angeles Lakers, how much does LeBron James have left in the tank? A lot of these scenarios show, and when you look at the NBA Finals matchup that we got this year, things are wide open. And when you have a team, second best record in the Western Conference, granted, youngest team to qualify for the playoffs, Future's bright. A lot of draft picks. Strong core. Do you stay the course, or do you get a little aggressive and try to win now? And the Thibodeau firing, it does show, it's a what have you done for me lately. I think a lot of times you go to places and they forget where they were before you got there. Sometimes when you've got that 5 to 7 years, probably 7 years max, before they start comparing those expectations to what they want and wanting a championship, and they forget where the franchise was before you got there. Right now, things are high for Ime Udoka, but have to also ask, are the Rockets a true contender? And I know that sounds crazy because had the second best record in the Western Conference Finals, although a distant second, but behind Oklahoma City. But when you look at the way that the Western Conference is built, I mean, you could be 5th or 6th next year. You could be 2nd again, but you could be 5th or 6th next year. So Rockets right now, winning over 50 games, you got to probably get a little bit aggressive and see what the options are. And of course, probably going to be talking about this over and over again. And this is a topic that's not going to die, is Giannis Antetokounmpo, this is going to be a story until he lands somewhere. And with Thibodeau getting fired from New York, obviously the Knicks, that the Knicks are going to be in on trying to get Giannis. There's going to be a lot of teams out there potentially trying to get him, but the Rockets may be able to offer the best package. And I want to go ahead and give you guys a trade scenario that I saw on Bleacher Report. And this is just a proposed trade. And we'll get into some rumors, and let me know any proposed trades that you have. If you want to have a package for Giannis or anybody else out there, OG Anunoby, anybody, go ahead and put those in the comments, and we'll look at them. And if there's some that look realistic, we'll go ahead and maybe discuss them on one of these future episodes. But Bleacher Report has the Milwaukee Bucks, also in baseball mode, do a lot of baseball stuff too, but the Milwaukee Bucks proposing a trade to the Houston Rockets. And the Houston Rockets, according to Bleacher Report, in this proposed trade, Houston Rockets just getting back Giannis. Now the Milwaukee Bucks would be receiving Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson, a 2027 first round pick, a 2028 first round pick swap, a 2030 first round pick, and a 2032 first round pick. Now, obviously, just the way that the NBA works, those 2030 and 2032 first round picks are something that the fan base will probably feel and could possibly regret later. But the current the current front office, current coaching staff, if they're not contending for a championship by then, the odds are that they're not going to be there. So for a lot of times for management, those 2030 and 2032 picks are picks that they kind of could throw away because it doesn't matter to them until you look at, you're the Clippers and you look at the Paul George trade and you see the Thunder, what they've turned it into. Paul George has moved on, and who's stuck with the problem? The fan base and the ownership at the time, all that time later. But when looking at this trade, I want to ask you guys, who says no? Do you pull the trigger on this? Here's the issue with this trade for me. There's a couple issues with this trade. First of all, the thing with Fred VanVleet, he's definitely going to be a win now player. And I'm going to talk about him a little bit more later, but he's definitely a win now player. So, if you move him and you move Thompson, you're moving a strong veteran. Chemistry often gets overrated in the NBA. I should say underrated in the NBA. And talent sometimes gets a little overrated. You need talent to win, but just because you upgrade with a more talented player does not mean that it's going to upgrade your team or the chemistry. So looking at this, you lose leadership in VanVleet, And then you lose a guy who, Amin Thompson, who, first team NBA all defense, not a guy that you really want to get rid of. But after that, you're basically just giving away future picks. You keep the rest of the team intact. So if you do that, you've got you still got Şengün, you've got Jalen Green, you've got Dillon Brooks still, and you bring in Giannis. So in the short term, if you give up VanVleet and Thompson for Giannis, are you better? Someone could say yes, but I'm not so sure. That's just something to kind of think about there. I personally, and not to knock him, I would really like to find a way, if you could do this trade, to not give up Thompson and give up Jalen Green instead. Now the only issues with that is when you look at, who is really, who is untouchable on this roster. That is definitely, that's definitely going to be a question. But, when you look at that, I kind of view Thompson as an untouchable, but I guess no one is really untouchable when you think about it for the right move. Because even if you keep Thompson, and let's say, like I just proposed, you move Jalen Green instead, and you have, Thompson, who I believe is untouchable in my opinion. Two untouchables on this roster in my opinion are Şengün and Thompson. But if you bring those two back and you add Giannis, thing with the Rockets, second worst three-point shooting team that made the playoffs last season behind the Orlando Magic. So if you do those moves, you're really still going to have an outside shooting problem unless you make some adjustments. Because with Şengün, with Thompson, with Giannis, you're still weak there in your perimeter shooting. I mean, Dillon Brooks was the top three-point shooter on the team last season, out of guys who actually shot at a high volume clip. So that is definitely something to think about there. So who is really untouchable on this roster? I think that the guys that can be in conversation would be Jalen Green, Thompson, and Şengün. I just believe Thompson and Şengün. So let me know what you guys think about that as far as who are the untouchables and who would say no in that trade. And then finally, we're talking about VanVleet a little bit earlier here. Right now the option is, with his player option coming up at the end of June, getting just under $45 million for 1 year would be the agreement. I think that the best case scenario for everyone here would be for the Rockets to go ahead and reach out a deal where a longer term deal with less money per year. You don't want to be paying that $45 million for just, obviously you'd like them to lock them in for longer, but you'd be able to add more assets in the immediate future and pay less than the $45 million for next season. Thing with VanVleet, you can't trade him without signing him to a new contract. So right now, the Rockets can't just deal him away. You've got to re-sign him or else you lose him. So obviously it's going to work out best to reach out an agreement for him to restructure this to get a longer term deal. I'd say to probably stretch this out to maybe about a 3-year deal instead of a 1-year deal. But he's definitely a win now player on this roster. So if you move him, you bring in Giannis, are you really getting better? And is even getting Giannis at all the move, or is it a little bit of a desperate move? Kevin Durant, somebody that we'll talk about in the future, but sometimes just breaking up your team chemistry to get one player does not ultimately make you better. It definitely raises the expectations. And then also, the question is, how would Giannis mesh with Udoka's coaching style? Because when you bring in a superstar like that, Udoka, he's been able to shape this team. He's had a lot of, his players in there, young players, and brought in the type of veterans he wants. You bring in a guy like Giannis, if he doesn't like you, he's calling the shots, and it could change the team chemistry. So we're just going to go ahead and wrap it up for Rockets Daily today. But let us know in the comments, as far as the trade scenarios, any trade scenarios you have, who do you believe is untouchable? And to that trade that we proposed earlier, who says no in your opinion? Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.